I'll be honest, I'm not Harry's biggest fan right now, especially after watching that mocking curtsy clip in the Netflix mockumentary. But this video isn't about defending Harry, it's about understanding patterns that so many people experience without even realizing it. In this video, we're looking at an article that gives rare insight into Harry's friendships, his growing homesickness, and how much his world has changed since he met Meghan. And while this story is about the two of them, it's really bigger. We're going to use Harry's situation to explore something deeper: how isolation can happen gradually, how controlled access to friends and family can reshape your reality, and how identity shifts when your entire world starts revolving around one person. My goal isn't to analyze Harry for the sake of gossip, it's to help all of us recognize these dynamics. So, if you've ever felt your own world getting smaller, your voices fading, or your reality become tied to someone else's narrative, this video is for you. So let's break this down, starting with this article and why it matters more than it seems. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. The article was just published in the Mirror. It's titled "Prince Harry's Scorned Pals Gave Rare Insight into Meghan Markle's Role in Friendships." The wording here isn't accidental. It sets up the whole narrative about Harry, Meghan, and control. This phrase that's used, scorned pals, this is a highly emotional phrase, and it paints Harry's friends as betrayed or angry. It frames their perspective coming from hurt or resentment. And then having this word Meghan Markle's role in quotation marks, it subtly questions Meghan's intentions and influence, hinting that there's something manipulative in her involvement and that she is central to Harry's changing friendships. Spoiler alert, she's absolutely involved in what Harry's life has become now. The article begins, "Now, a friend of Prince Harry's has claimed that the Duke of Sussex has become increasingly homesick after living in California for 5 years following his retirement from his royal role. With many of Harry's friends and family still living in the UK and Harry's trips to his home country becoming less frequent, one of the prince's friends told The Standard, Spike, his nickname among his school friends, is seriously homesick." Let's pause here. This phrase, increasingly homesick, is telling us that the feelings are getting more and more intense as time moves on. It signals something deeper than just a casual nostalgia, and it points towards growing discontent and unmet needs in his current life. It's been 5 years since he left the royal family, since he left his home of the UK, and that's usually enough time for most people to adjust, to develop routines, friendships, and a sense of belonging. But he hasn't. The fact that homesickness is mentioned here suggests that he is not fully assimilated to California and his support network is limited. To further compound the isolation, the article reminds us that his trips back home have become less frequent. This is compounding his feelings of isolation and intensifies longing. I also think that since the word Spike nickname is included here, it's telling. It suggests to us that this information is likely coming from someone in his old inner circle, someone who knew him before Meghan, essentially. It implies that he still talks to those friends and maybe shares more with them than we realize. And here is the big picture. Narcissists use isolation as leverage. Cutting someone off from their long-standing support network is incredibly common in narcissistic dynamics. When you remove someone from their familiar environment, their routines, their friends, and even their identity anchors, like Harry's old nickname Spike, you make them easier to influence. And remember, this isn't always obvious or intentional at first. It often happens gradually. Fewer trips back home, fewer calls with friends, fewer opportunities to hear different perspectives. Over time, the narcissistic partner becomes the primary source of validation, approval, and connection. That creates dependency, which makes it harder to question the narrative or push back against control. So when we hear Harry's friends say he's increasingly homesick even after 5 years, it signals more than nostalgia. It points to unmet emotional needs, potential identity displacement, and a growing gap between who he was and who he's expected to be now. Let's continue the article. It says the unnamed friend went on to reveal he started reaching out to us more and more. It started with very long and earnest WhatsApps. We actually all made a decision when we started getting them not to take the piss out of them, something we couldn't have imagined doing a few years before. Anyway, gradually he seems to be sounding more normal. Let's pause here because there is a lot happening. First, the fact that Harry is reaching out more really stands out to me because it suggests he might be craving reconnection with people who knew him before everything changed. That's usually a sign that someone is longing for grounding, almost trying to reconnect with the version of themselves that felt safe. And then the way these chats are described as being very long, it says a lot. It implies that there's probably some emotional unloading that's happening here. In my opinion, he doesn't have people in his current circle he feels safe confiding in. And also, this word earnest suggests vulnerability, like he's reaching out hoping to be understood and validated by the friends who knew the real Harry. But here's the part that really grabbed me. We decided not to take the piss out of them. I had never heard of that phrase. And I looked it up and it's describing that it's a banter heavy teasing dynamic. And the suggestion here is that this is what their friendships and their conversation was like previously. But these friends have collectively agreed to protect him instead of joking with him, which implies that they sense fragility. And the fact that they couldn't have imagined doing this a few years before tell us how much he's changed in their eyes. This paragraph ends with the friend saying that he's starting to sound more normal. That's subtle and also really telling. There was a time that he didn't sound like himself. Maybe his tone, personality, or perspective had shifted. But now, by reconnecting with his old friends, it seems they're hearing little signs of the old Harry returning. To me, all of this isn't just about homesickness. It hints at someone who's reaching for pieces of their identity that got lost along the way. And when you combine this with the broader themes of isolation we've been talking about, it really paints a picture of someone trying to find their way back to who they used to be. All of this points to a bigger dynamic we often see in narcissistic relationship: identity erosion through isolation. When someone is gradually removed from their old friends, routines, and sense of self, they slowly start relying more and more on the narcissistic partner for validation and belonging. That dependency makes questioning the relationship or even trusting their own instincts a lot harder. But here's the thing: when we hear that Harry's reaching out more, sharing long messages, and starting to sound more normal, that can be a sign that he's reconnecting with his identity. Those friends are anchors to the person he was before. And in dynamics like this, reaching back for those anchors is often one of the first steps toward regaining autonomy. Narcissists often separate partners from old friends, routines, and identity anchors. Over time, the partner relies almost entirely on the narcissist for validation, safety, and belonging. When they start reaching back to their old world, it can signal a craving for autonomy and self reconnection. The article continues. Harry's friend added that whenever one of his long lost pals travels to the US, they try to catch up, but with one notable absence. They said, whenever anyone goes to America, they try to see him. It never seems to be with Meghan, though. We think he is beginning to pine for home. Let's pause here. This part was kind of surprising to me because Meghan is not there. And for someone who is so controlling of Harry, this just seemed counterintuitive. But what does it mean? Is it that Harry prefers to see them privately, or is it that Meghan is choosing not to be involved? Either way, it's highlighting a distance between Meghan and his old inner circle. And the friend suggests that he's pining for home. I don't think this is just about missing the UK. It's deeper than that. It's about longing for connection, belonging, and identity. The version of himself that existed before California, before Megxit, before Meghan, I would say. When you put it all together, fewer trips home, private friend visits, and homesickness after 5 years, it suggests that Harry might be quietly reaching for pieces of who he used to be. Something that comes up often in narcissistic dynamics is controlled access. Over time, the narcissistic partner doesn't always cut you off from your old life directly. It can happen subtly. Maybe you start seeing friends less often, trips back home become fewer, and eventually, even when you do reconnect with people from your past, it happens separately. away from your partner. Little by little, your old anchors, the friends, routines, and identities that made you you, begin to fade. And that's where identity erosion starts. The relationship slowly becomes the center of gravity, and you find yourself relying more and more on one person for connection, validation, and belonging. The article continues. It was recently reported that Harry now only has six pals in Britain, and his small circle are unwilling to challenge the royal when he makes bad decisions. A number of factors have contributed to Harry losing old friends and gaining new ones, such as moving to California with Meghan and relations being at an all time low with Prince William. Let's pause here. When I first saw that number of only six pals in Britain, that didn't sound alarming to me because I remembered something from the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, where they suggest that having six close, trusted people in your inner circle, and that can be really healthy. At the time when I had read that, that actually surprised me because I always assumed the number would be smaller, maybe one or two. But here's the important part. The book emphasizes that even if your circle is small, you need balance. If you're relying on just one or two people for emotional support, it puts a huge amount of pressure on those relationships. Sometimes too much for any one person to carry. That's why having a slightly bigger circle can be healthier. It spreads out the emotional load, it gives you more perspective, and protects your relationships from burning out. But what this article is saying is not that his circle is small by choice. It's shrunk over time because of distance, fractured family ties, and shifting dynamics. The article also says that the friends don't challenge him when he makes bad decisions. That's a problem because a healthy inner circle should be safe enough. That's a problem because a healthy inner circle should be safe enough to give honest feedback. When your world gets smaller, fewer friends, and fewer outside voices, you risk falling into what's called an echo chamber. You hear the same perspective over and over time, it becomes harder to separate your partner's version of reality from your own. That's why this piece of the article feels so significant to me because it's not just about having six friends, it's about how and why his circle got that small and whether he still has the freedom to choose who's in it. And that brings us to something important. In narcissistic dynamics, shrinking someone's world isn't always accidental. The fewer outside voices you hear, the easier it becomes for one person to control the narrative, and sometimes you don't even realize that it's happening. The article continues. He reportedly fell out with his childhood best friend, Tom Skippy Inskip, after Skippy allegedly questioned the suitability of Meghan as a future royal. According to the 2020 book Finding Freedom, Tom expressed doubts about how quickly the relationship was moving and told Harry he should live with Meghan before doing anything more serious. This part really caught my attention, not because I automatically believe it, but because of where it's coming from. Finding Freedom was co written by Omid Scobie, who we know is Meghan's mouthpiece, allegedly, and that's why this feels so strange. If Meghan had influence over what went into this book, you'd expect the narrative to paint her in the best possible light. So, why include something that hints at tension? Harry allegedly falling out with his best friend because Skippy questioned the relationship. It raises the question about intent. Was this detail included to make Skippy look disloyal, or was it meant to reinforce a narrative that people didn't support Meghan early on? Or could it be another example where Meghan miscalculated how the audience would read it? Either way, this feels like a pivotal moment. In hindsight, it seems to be one of the first cracks in Harry's oldest relationships and a step toward the isolation we're seeing now. The article continues. Authors Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand wrote that although Tom's advice came from a good place, Harry didn't totally see it that way. As a result of the falling out, it was claimed Skippy and wife Laura were punished by being excluded from Harry and Meghan's evening wedding party at Frogmore House. Let's pause here. I remember reading in a book, I don't remember if it was Tom Bower's Revenge or Lady C's book, but the friends would talk to each other and they would call it NFI, which is not, and then a bad word, invited. So this was something common that Harry's friends were talking about, that there were selective friends that were just not invited to the wedding who would assume that they would be there because of their proximity and their closeness to Harry. It's also interesting to me that, again, in the book, it's framing this advice as coming from a good place. Perhaps the inclusion of this in Omid Scobie or in this book was to show that Harry was the one that didn't see it that way and that Meghan didn't influence his friendships, but we know where it's coming from. Regardless of the inclusion of this detail, it unintentionally highlights a bigger pattern we often see in narcissistic dynamics: punishment through exclusion. In narcissistic dynamics, questioning the relationship can come at a cost: loss of access, privileges, and closeness, a powerful way to control loyalty. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with 3 quick tips that can help you protect your identity and autonomy in any relationship. Number 1, notice controlled access. If you find your circle getting smaller, you're having fewer friends and listening to fewer voices, pause and ask if it's by choice or if someone else is quietly influencing it. Number 2, protect your anchors. Stay connected to the people, routines, and parts of yourself that existed before the relationship. Those anchors keep your identity intact. And number 3, reality check your perspective. If you feel like you're constantly questioning your own memories or feelings, talk to a trusted friend, therapist, or journal. Seeing the bigger picture helps you stay grounded. What we're seeing here isn't just about Harry losing friends, it's about patterns. Isolation, controlled access, shrinking circles, and subtle punishments for dissent are all dynamics you often find in narcissistic relationships. The real takeaway isn't whether Harry chose this or whether Meghan intended it. It's the impact. When your world gets smaller, your sources of support get fewer, and your identity becomes more tied to one person. It can change how you see yourself and your reality. And that's why all of this, I believe, will resonate with so many people. It's not just about royals, it's about relationships, control, and what happens when power and identity get tangled together. I'm curious to know what you all think about this. Please drop your thoughts in the comments. If this was interesting to you, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for a meaningful way to support something beyond the screen, I'd love for you to consider making a donation to the National Domestic Violence Hotline in lieu of super chats and super stickers. They provide 24/7 support and resources for people in unsafe or overwhelming situations, whether that's emotional, physical, or just hard to name. Their information is on the screen should you need to contact them, and you'll find the link to donate in the description of this video. Every little bit helps, and it means a lot. Thank you again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.